Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 31 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half. You can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. My co-host chair is empty again today, but we're going to give it the best go that we can on a solo preview show, and we're going to get to some NFL QB tiers. So the Eagles don't play this week. Normally, we spend about half of the show talking about the Eagles and their upcoming matchup. The Eagles are on a bye this week. I guess you could say this matchup is Eagles against Eagles media trying to create a quarterback controversy. But before we get into all of that, we're going to do QB tiers. We're going to break down every Week 14 game. But this is going out live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We've got some issues with our Facebook right now. But if you are watching live, be sure and drop us a comment. I'd love to interact with you guys, especially flying solo without a host. Being able to bounce some thoughts back and forth is always appreciated. So drop us a comment live here. It goes out on Apple Podcasts later, so please follow, rate, review, give us a 5-star. It really helps us out. So today, in place of our normal Eagles preview, I'm going to be taking a look at QB tiers. Now, I don't have a fancy QB tier maker list. I was going to use one, but I realized they're all a little bit outdated. They don't have the most up-to-date starters necessarily. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at starting quarterbacks and a few where it's a little ambiguous. Like I've got Jameis Winston and Trevor Siemian on there. They've both started games this year. I've got Andy Dalton and Justin Fields on here because they've both started games this year. And I'm going to break them down into categories of elite, great, above average, average, below average, and backups. And so you can sound off and let me know what you think. I'm also going to put a rookie category over here just because I don't think you can really assign a tier to these rookie quarterbacks just yet. I mean, you just haven't seen enough out of them. You've got Trevor Lawrence, who was considered this generational talent. He hasn't had a great year, but it's his first year. He's playing with poor coaching. He's playing with no weapons. He's making that leap to the NFL. You got guys like Trey Lance that aren't playing much at all. Mac Jones looks the best out of the rookie quarterbacks, and I don't think the tape tells that story. So I don't want to put these guys in a tier yet. You can call it a cop-out if you want, but I'll include them on a tier ranking that I do, maybe in the offseason or for sure next year. And so let's just start out here with Tom Brady. And Tom Brady really can't go in any category other than elite, in my opinion. Now, I guess I will qualify that I'm looking at these quarterbacks both mainly now with a little bit of a view to the future. And so, a younger quarterback that is maybe the same level as a 35-year-old quarterback, he might be up a little bit elevated because of what he has in the future. But for the most part, I'm evaluating their play for this season. If I had a team that was tied for a division lead right now with 5 games left, who would I want quarterbacking if I could pick any of these quarterbacks? And I'm going to go with Tom Brady. He leads the NFL in passing yards this year with 3,771. He's completing 68% of his passes with a 34-10 touchdown to interception ratio. And so, if you are in a playoff push, there is a lot worse quarterbacks that you could have than Tom Brady. Next, let's go to Joe Burrow. I'm going to put Joe Burrow in the he's kind of a borderline guy. I'm going to put him in the above average category for now. I think he has the potential to move into that great category. He certainly hasn't done enough to be in the elite category, but Joe Burrow has had a solid year. He's got 3,100 passing yards, averaging 8.3 yards per attempt, 68% completions. His interceptions are a little high with 14 interceptions. That's up there among the leaders in the NFL. In fact, it is the lead in the NFL. And so for that reason, I don't think you can put him in the great category, but I think he's a guy that you can really trust. I think he's a young guy that Bengals fans should certainly be excited about. Now, they need to be concerned about his health. They need to keep him upright and all of those things. But Joe Burrow is going to go in the above average tier for me. Teddy Bridgewater is our next guy that we're going to place here. And I'm going to put Teddy Bridgewater as a below average quarterback. I think Teddy Bridgewater can be a starter in this league. I don't think, we quantify players sometimes as a player you win because of, a player you win with, or a player you win in spite of. And I think Bridgewater is a guy you can win with. Completing 67% of his passes this year. He's only got 7 interceptions. So he takes care of the ball. Now, when he does throw an interception, he's going to make no effort as a tackle. He's given up 2 pick sixes this year where he had a shot at a tackle. I think Bridgewater can start. I think ideally you'd rather him be your backup, but he's a below average starter and a guy that in the right situation with the right team, maybe you could look at trying to make a playoff push with Teddy Bridgewater. Up next, we've got Kyler Murray, and I'm going to place Kyler Murray in the great tier. And Kyler Murray is one of those guys that he has, he doesn't have the most flashy passing numbers. Now, he's missed 3 games this year, but he's still completing 73% of his passes, a 19-7 touchdown to interception ratio. But the threat that he brings on the ground, the way that he opens up that offense, Kyler Murray is a very exciting young quarterback. His legs elevate his arm talent. This is a guy that can make all the throws, but he can also make you miss with his legs. And so he goes into the great category for me. Up next, we've got Trevor Siemian, and Trevor Siemian is going to go in the backup category. Trevor Siemian's not a guy that you want starting any games, as any Saints fan can attest. There's really not much to say there. Trevor Siemian is a backup quarterback. Up next, we have Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr is up near the top of the league in passing. He's number 2 behind Tom Brady. He's completed 68% of his passes for 3,663 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. However, he's just not a guy that I don't know if I trust him the most week to week. And so, although his numbers are not much worse than Brady's, the eye test tells a different story. I'm not even sure that I want to put Derek Carr in a great category. I'm going to put him at the upper echelon of the above average category here. Call it a gut feeling, call it who I would trust, but I'm going to leave Carr out of the great in the above average. Now, I should note these tiers are not in any specific order. Just because Burrow is above Carr doesn't mean I value him above Carr in this list. It's just how it's ordered out here, although I would take Burrow over Carr. Up next, we have Big Ben Roethlisberger. Now, Ben Roethlisberger has thrown for 3,000 yards this year, 19-7 touchdown to interception ratio, completing 65% of his passes. At this point, I'm going to say he is a below average quarterback. I think he is near the end of his, well, he's at the end of his career. He should have been at the end of his career a year ago. I'm not going to put him in the backup category because you don't want this guy as your backup quarterback, I don't think. But I think, for the rest of this season, he's below average. You could win some games with him, but he's certainly not a guy that you're going to want to ask to do just too much. Up next, we have Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has completed 67% of his passes, 7.1 yards per attempt, 14 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. I think Ryan Tannehill is an average quarterback. Despite the fact that his numbers don't look great this year, I'd put him in the average tier just simply because, they added in Julio Jones and they adjusted an offense, and then Julio has been hurt. And then Derrick Henry has got hurt. There's just been so much upheaval this year with coaching change and personnel changes. I think Tannehill is a little better than his numbers show. I would certainly rather have him than Teddy Bridgewater or Ben Roethlisberger. Next, we've got Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is a guy that would have probably been near the top of this list if this list was made a year ago. But Russell Wilson has really struggled this year. He's got his touchdown interception ratio is good. It's 14-4. It's elite even. He's completing 67% of his passes, but this offense just doesn't have it anymore. It's not clicking. Right now, I'm going to put Russell Wilson in the above average category. I don't think he belongs in that great category at the moment. But, if he changes teams next year and gets back on a groove, maybe you could see something different. Next, we've got Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton goes in the backup category. Really nothing else to say there. Andy Dalton is a backup, even if Matt Nagy doesn't understand that. Trey Lance is going to go in our rookie category. Like I said, I'm not going to evaluate rookie quarterbacks right now, but even if I was, I couldn't evaluate Trey Lance. He simply hasn't played enough. Sam Darnold is the next quarterback on our list, and Darnold is also going to go very squarely in the backup category. Darnold had his chance this season. The Panthers stupidly traded for him, picked up his 5th-year option, and he has answered with a 7 touchdown to 11 interception, a 71 passer rating, completing less than 60% of his passes. Now, I know it hasn't been ideal. He's had Christian McCaffrey out, but this is just not a good quarterback, and it's time that people just let him go. Up next, we have Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy G, the guy whose replacement was drafted, and now he's fended him off. Jimmy Garoppolo is having a good year this year. 15 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, completing 67% of his passes. But it's very telling that the 49ers are utilizing such a rush-heavy attack with Jimmy Garoppolo. And so right now I'm going to say Jimmy Garoppolo is in the average category. I think he can come into your team and you could make a push with him, but ultimately he's not the type of guy that's going to win you games. Up next, we have Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz, I'm also going to put in the average category. Wentz has had a little bit of a resurgence this year in Indianapolis. Certainly he's playing better than he did a year ago in Philadelphia when he was benched. His touchdowns are up, his interceptions are down. He seems to be taking care of the ball more, but you just have the feeling that this guy is never too far away from just a bonehead play that will kill your team. And so Carson Wentz, I think he can get into that above average category, but this is a guy, he needs a good rushing attack. He needs the right situation. And for right now, I think he's played himself from a below average starter a year ago to an average starter, trending towards above average if he can continue to play at that level. Up next, we have Matthew Stafford. And this is a guy who would have had probably a different placement had this list been done a couple of weeks ago. But Stafford has really struggled the last few weeks. Right now, he sits third in the NFL in passing with 3,611 yards, 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions with a 67% completion percentage. I'm going to put Matthew Stafford in the above average category right now. I think he was trending towards that great category, but whether it's health or whether it's just Stafford doing things that Stafford always does, he's really fallen off the rails, and a guy that I wouldn't necessarily trust in a push right now for a team that's as all in as the Rams are. Up next, we have Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins he breaks every advanced metric that's out there. He has good EPA. He has all these advanced stats, and yet the tail of the tape just tells you that Kirk Cousins is not a good quarterback. I'll put him in the average tier because he does put up good numbers against bad teams, and this isn't a guy that you can trust either. Justin Jefferson has made his feelings known about Kirk Cousins. I fully expect him to be out next year. Where he ends up, I don't know. Up next, we have Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has completed 68% of his passes this year, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He has taken a boatload of sacks, 26 sacks. I believe that's one of the higher numbers in the NFL. It's actually at the bottom of the top 10. So it's not as bad as I thought it was, but Matt Ryan is a guy that was a really good quarterback early on in his career. The hits are taking a toll. He's getting up there in age. I'm going to say that right now, Matt Ryan he's on the lower end of average. Up next, we have Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a backup quarterback. This guy, he's thrown the ball away on fourth down 2 different times this year. This isn't a guy that should be in a game. He should not be a starter for your football team. And so Jared Goff is a backup. Up next, we have Tua. Tua is an interesting example to look at. He's a guy, he plays on a team that doesn't have a very good offense. He's kind of struggled off and on throughout his career. Right now, he's completing 71% of his passes, 12 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. His ADOT has been really low. They've started to move to an RPO-heavy attack for Tua, and it has really helped out. And so I think your seed Tua has moved from kind of this below average to average tier, and I think his arrow is pointing up as the Dolphins start to figure out some ways to get him incorporated more into this offense. Up next, we have Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, if you listen to this podcast, you know I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan. Justin Herbert goes in the great category for me. This season, he's completed 66% of his passes, 27 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. They have started to allow him to air the ball out a little bit more. This guy's got a great arm. He can make every throw. I fully expect him to be in that elite tier in a couple of seasons. And so Justin Herbert, one of the quarterbacks I'm most excited about in the league right now. Up next, we have Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is going to join Tom Brady in the elite category. He doesn't have the most yardage this year. He's only got 78 yards, but he's got 23 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's playing at as high of a level as ever. And this is a team that's in a playoff push. They're making a push for the 1 seed, and they're doing it largely on the back of Aaron Rodgers leading this team. And so Aaron Rodgers, he gets the elite vote as long as he continues to play this way. Trevor Lawrence is going to go in our rookie category. So is Zach Wilson. Again, we're not going to evaluate the rookies. I'll go ahead and throw Davis Mills and Justin Fields over here while we were at it. So that brings us to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, I'm going to put in the below average category of starting quarterbacks right now. And Eagles fans may not be happy about that, but the reality is that Jalen Hurts, he's only completing 60% of his passes this year. He's got 13 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, 6.9 yards per attempt. He's thrown for 2,400 yards. When the Eagles have needed to air the ball out, Jalen Hurts simply hasn't been able to deliver. You look at his performance in the Giants game where they were, it's not a good defense, and they were down 2 starting safeties and 2 of their top 3 corners, and he turned the ball over several times. And you look at the winning streak they had, and it was largely on running the football. Jalen Hurts is he's a good running quarterback. He's good at running the ball, but you have to be able to throw the ball. And that's the difference between a guy like Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, guys who played at the same college. They're both good runners, but Kyler Murray can make every throw. And I just haven't seen that from Jalen Hurts. And so, if he can push down this stretch and show that he can throw the ball a little more than he's been asked to, maybe he gets the bump up to that average category. But right now, he's going to go in the below average for me. Eagles fans might not want to hear it, but that's where we're currently at with Jalen Hurts. Mac Jones, I'm going to stick over here with the rookies that we're not evaluating. Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to put in the elite category. And that may raise some eyebrows. Patrick Mahomes has not had the best year this year. He's looked more mortal. The Chiefs' offense hasn't been good, but look at his numbers. 3,384 passing yards. That's good for 6th in the league. He's averaging 7.1 yards per attempt, completing 65% of his passes. He's got 25 touchdowns versus only 12 interceptions. And so this is a guy that's playing not at the level that we're used to. And I think people knock him for that. They're used to the elite Patrick Mahomes. And now instead of like God Patrick Mahomes, we're just a really, really good football player Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's still deserving of the elite category. If this was his first year in the league and he played the way that he has, I think people would be really high on Patrick Mahomes. But people seem to be down because they're used to him playing at a level that he's simply not playing at the moment. And so I'm going to stick him in elite. You may argue with that, but that's where we've got him on this ranking. Up next, we have Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, I'm going to put in the great category. Josh Allen's 2020 was elite category. This year, he's taken a step back, I think. He's completing 65% of his passes, 26 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 3,200 yards passing. He's still a very good quarterback. I just don't think he's quite at the level that he was. I don't trust him game in and game out as much as I trust anyone in that elite category. And so it's not a knock on Allen. Being a great quarterback, obviously he's in the top 6 of guys that I've ranked so far, and it's well-deserved. Up next, we've got Lamar Jackson. I'm also going to put Lamar in the great category. He's struggling down the stretch here. He's got 13 interceptions to only 16 touchdowns. The Ravens are banged up. They don't have a lot of weapons out there. And Lamar Jackson, for really it seems like a couple of years, has carried this passing attack that hasn't given him weapons. Hollywood Brown didn't turn into a great first-round pick. They just haven't put a lot of weapons around him. And now with the running game failing, wide receiver injuries stacking up, you're starting to see perhaps some of the limitations of Lamar Jackson. And so I'm very high on Lamar, but at this point in time, I feel like you have to acknowledge the fact that he's not playing as well, largely due to the system. But an elite quarterback's going to overcome that. A great quarterback can be limited by that. I think he is squarely in that great category. Up next, we have Daniel Jones. I think I'm going to put Daniel Jones also in the below average tier. I think I'm not a Daniel Jones person. I don't think that the Giants should move forward with Daniel Jones. He's completed 64% of his passes. He's only thrown 10 touchdowns this year to 7 interceptions. He's got the mobility. I just haven't seen the growth from him that you would want to see in a quarterback in his 3rd season. And so Daniel Jones, I believe the Giants should move on from him this offseason if they have a chance. If they have a chance to pull the trigger on something else. I don't think this is the guy that you build your franchise around. All right, moving on to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's a difficult guy to place. He's coming off of the injury. He's been injured he's been banged up this season, but This is a guy who's thrown for 3,100 yards. He's completing 69% of his passes, 23 touchdowns versus 8 interceptions, and he has a QB rating of a 101.7. And this may also cause a stir, but I'm going to put Dak Prescott in the elite category. This is a guy that I'm very high on as a quarterback. He's proven this year that, he hasn't come back with the mobility that he once had with that ankle injury, and he is still playing at such a high level. There's only like 4 quarterbacks that have a higher QB rating than him. It's Aaron Rodgers, it's Kirk Cousins, which we already talked about Kirk Cousins breaking all metrics. It's Matthew Stafford, who had a lightning start to the year, and it's Tom Brady. A QB rating isn't an end-all statistic, but Dak Prescott's a good quarterback. He benefits from having a ton of weapons at his disposal. Maybe his weapons have elevated him from great to elite. But whatever it is, Dak Prescott is going to go in the elite category for me. Up next, we have Taylor Heinicke. And without my co-host here to defend Taylor Heinicke, I'm free to deride him as much as I want, but I won't. Taylor Heinicke has turned in a solid year. 2,800 yards passing, 68% completion, 18 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. No, he can't make every throw. He doesn't have the arm to make all of the throws that you'd like to see an NFL quarterback make, but he does keep them in games. He doesn't make huge mistakes, and he's able to make some plays with his legs. I'm going to put Taylor Heinicke. He's going to go in the below average category, but unlike Teddy Bridgewater, Ben Roethlisberger, Daniel Jones, guys that are below average that are trending down, Taylor Heinicke, Jalen Hurts are below average guys that maybe they can develop into something. And so there is a little bit of a differentiation there. Up next, we have Baker Mayfield. It's hard to evaluate Baker Mayfield having played injured all season. I'm going to try to remove the injury issues from it, and I'm just going to plug Baker in as an average quarterback. I'm on record on this podcast saying I don't think the Browns should pay Baker. Sometimes teams overpay for average quarterbacks, and I certainly think that's what the Browns would be doing if they pay Baker Mayfield. And finally, we have Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, another hard guy to place. It looked like early in the season that he was going to elevate his game from, before he's only completing 59% of his passes, but he had 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Then he gets hurt. I'm not willing to put him above the average tier just simply because he didn't do it for a whole season. But this is a guy somebody should take a risk on next offseason. If you're a Giants team with Daniel Jones, or if you're a Steelers team or a Broncos team that wants to compete, but you're not in love with any of the quarterbacks, maybe you go get Jameis Winston and you give him a shot and see what you can make out of him. So that's my QB tier ratings here. On the elite tier, we have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Dak Prescott. On the great tier, I have Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. In the above average tier, I have Joe Burrow, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, and Matthew Stafford. Average, I have Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy G, Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, Tua Tagovailoa, Baker Mayfield, and Jameis Winston. In below average, I have Teddy Bridgewater, Ben Roethlisberger, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, and Taylor Heinicke. In backups, I have Trevor Siemian, Andy Dalton, Sam Darnold, and Jared Goff. And then, of course, the rookies, we did not place in a tier, but we'll try that another time. So I'll tweet this out. Let me know. You feel free to let me know in the comments here or on Twitter what you guys agree and disagree with. I'd love to dialogue about that with you. So with that all aside, let's go ahead and jump into our Around the NFL, our preview, which will be a little shorter this week, but that's okay. So we have Dallas traveling to Washington to take on the football team. Washington has won 4 straight games, and they're playing great right now. Their defense has looked better. Taylor Heinicke has been playing well. Meanwhile, Dallas has lost 3 out of their last 5. And so the offense has struggled a little bit. There's been injuries. We talked about on the review show that Dallas is getting healthier. They've got Neville Gallimore back, DeMarcus Lawrence, Amari Cooper. So they've got some guys coming back, reinforcements. They've got young guys playing at a great level right now in CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. Dallas has a 2-game lead in the division. They've got 2 games left against Washington, the team that I put a futures bet on at the beginning of the year to go and win this division. I thought they were the most likely team. That was obviously before I knew how Dak was going to come back from his injury. And so this game being in Washington, with Washington surging right now, I'm going to say that Washington wins this game. They keep it interesting as they take on the Eagles next week, and then they go right back to Dallas to play Dallas in what could be a pivotal game to decide who's going to win the NFC. So I'll take the football team here. I think it's going to be a great game, and it will make the NFC East very interesting to watch down the stretch. Up next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans. This is the second straight road game for Jacksonville against a team coming off of a bye. So the schedule makers are not doing them any favors here. Last week, they faced the Rams on the road coming off a bye. This week, it is the Titans. Now, the Titans were floundering before their bye. They were really struggling, just like the Rams were. Both teams get a cupcake team in the Jags after the bye. I have no confidence in this team. There's just not enough help there for Trevor Lawrence. There's not enough help for the coaching staff. I mean, Urban Meyer's not done a good job this year. He needs to go. The Jags need to commit to this, to a rebuild, to building around Trevor Lawrence and not let Urban Meyer ruin this. But I'm going to take the Titans here. I think they win. They have a get-right game against the Jags before they move into the end of their schedule. Up next, I've got Seattle traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. Now, Seattle got an impressive win over the 49ers, a win that not many people predicted, and they got their offense right. They put up 30 points. Now they play a floundering Texans team who may be forced to start Davis Mills again, one of those rookie quarterbacks we talked about. The truth is, whether it be Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills, both have been equally bad this year. The Texans should probably just go with Davis Mills at this point. Tyrod's not your quarterback of the future. Davis Mills probably isn't either, but you don't know that for a fact. Regardless of who starts, though, I think the Seahawks roll, and they keep a very slim hope at the playoffs alive. Moving on, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. This game was the best offensive performance of the Chiefs the whole season when they met in Week 10. They put up 41 points on the Raiders in Vegas. Now, the Raiders don't really get much of a home field advantage. That their stadium often gets taken over, just like the Rams and Chargers do in LA. There's not a big fan base there, so not necessarily a home field advantage, but they also weren't playing a true road game like they are this week in Arrowhead. And so the Chiefs are going to look to get their offense right, and the Raiders are coming off a home loss where they just looked lost. I think we're seeing the Raiders' annual meltdown after a strong start to the season. And I think the Chiefs will surge here. They're going to beat the Raiders, and I think they're going to beat the Raiders fairly easily. Up next, we have the New Orleans Saints at the New York Jets. The Saints have extended rest after playing Thursday night last week, and so they have a few extra days to recoup. Zach Wilson is coming off one of his best games of the year last week against the Eagles, where he scored 3 touchdowns, but the Saints have a much better defense than the Eagles do. And so what it ultimately comes down to is the Saints don't have a quarterback. The Jets have a rookie quarterback that's played really poorly, but the Saints have a defense and the Jets don't. And so the Saints are beat up. Kamara is out. Michael Thomas is gone. He's not going to play this season. They've got both of the offensive tackles banged up, but I trust the Saints defense to turn over Zach Wilson more than I trust the Jets defense to turn over Taysom Hill. Whoever ends up playing quarterback for the Saints this week. So this is going to be an ugly matchup, but I think the Saints make fewer mistakes on offense, and they ultimately win the game. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Carolina is coming off of a bye, and they fired Joe Brady last week as if that was actually the problem. Reportedly, Matt Rule wanted Joe Brady to run the ball 30 to 35 times per game. It was a philosophical difference, and so he fired Brady. Maybe that makes sense if Christian McCaffrey is around, but he's not. And Chuba Hubbard doesn't deserve 30 to 35 carries a game. Like, this is just a scapegoating. Matt Rule is trying to throw anybody but himself under the bus. I think Joe Brady should be the head coach of the Panthers. Like, the Panthers should have stepped in and fired Rule in this situation, but they don't. Joe Brady is a very talented coach that's going to get out of Carolina. I'd be shocked if he's not an OC somewhere or maybe even a head coach next season. But regardless, the Panthers, they come off of this bye. They're going to have a new play caller, and you never want to face a team coming off of a bye with a new play caller. I mean, even just a new play caller, you saw the Giants get the Eagles with that. Jason Garrett's gone, and even though Jason Garrett wasn't the problem, it just blows your tendencies away that you would study on film. And so this is a tricky matchup for the Falcons. They're not going to know exactly what to expect, although they should suspect they're going to see a lot of running, given Matt Rule's comments. The Falcons' defense is not that great. The Panthers' defense has been really good. And Matt Ryan has taken a lot of hits the last few weeks against a poor offensive line. And so I'm giving the advantage to the Panthers in this one. Just the uncertainty of the offensive play calling coupled with their defense feasting on Matt Ryan behind that bad O-line. I'll take the Panthers at home. Moving on, we have Baltimore at Cleveland. The Ravens are playing their second straight divisional road game, and Cleveland is coming off of a bye. And so the Ravens lose last week. Cleveland has a week to try to get healthy, to try to patch the holes in the ship. The Ravens' offense has struggled mightily the last few weeks. But so have the Browns. The Browns' offense has just been horrific. I think what this one ultimately comes down to is that the Browns have a running game and the Ravens don't. Lamar Jackson has struggled, and there is nobody there to help him out. Baker Mayfield has struggled, but he can hand the ball off to Nick Chubb 25, 30 times. And I think that's what we see in this game. I think Cleveland pounds the rock. They ask Baker Mayfield to make a few throws, and I think ultimately the Browns are going to come out on top in a devastating loss for the Ravens in their playoff push. Up next, we have the New York Giants at the LA Chargers. The Chargers had an impressive performance against the Bengals last week. They put up 41 points. They blow out the Bengals 41-22. And now they face the Giants, and the likely starting quarterback is third-string quarterback Jake Fromm. I think that's about all you need to know in this game. The Chargers are going to roll. Next, we have the Detroit Lions at the Denver Broncos. The Lions got their first win last week, and I hope they enjoyed it, because they face a Denver team that's playing really good defense, and they're in a playoff fight. I think Denver wins this game. I think they're going to be able to harass Jared Goff. They're going to be able to get after him, maybe force some turnovers. The Broncos' run defense isn't great, and so you're going to see the Lions try to pound the rock a lot, I think, take the ball out of Jared Goff's hands. But ultimately, I trust Teddy Bridgewater more than I trust Jared Goff. I trust the Denver defense more than I trust the Lions defense. I think the only advantage in this game for Detroit is that rushing attack against Denver's front, and you're going to see them look to exploit that to slow this game down. I think this could be a low-scoring game, but I think Denver wins in the end. Moving on, we have San Francisco 49ers traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Both of these teams are coming off of big divisional losses that impacted their playoff hopes. Now, San Francisco is likely still in the driver's seat for a wild card spot by virtue of the numbers game of Washington and Philadelphia playing each other twice. But they need to get back on track. The 49ers run game is clicking, but the Bengals only allow 67 yards per game on the ground the last 3 weeks, which is top in the league. Meanwhile, San Francisco allows the most yards per attempt over the last 3 weeks and the second most on the year. So this is a Bengals team that likes to spread you out. They like to throw the rock. And San Francisco is allowing a lot of yards per attempt. And I think this is a bad matchup for San Francisco. I think Cincinnati is going to win this game. And you're going to see doubts start to creep in about if this 49ers team can make the playoffs, even though I do think they will stabilize and ultimately do so. Moving on, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a huge game with massive playoff implications. Buffalo's coming off of a Monday Night Football loss, and they're traveling to Tampa to take on a really good Bucs team. Suddenly, Buffalo is in danger of missing the playoffs while Tampa is pushing to try to get a 1 seed or a home bye. They're 1 game behind the Cardinals, and they're tied with the Packers for the 2 seed, 1 step ahead of Dallas. And so this is a very important game for both teams. Ultimately, the Tampa pass defense isn't very good. They've been beat up by injuries. They're starting to get some guys back. And so I look for Josh Allen to have a good game in good weather this week in Tampa rather than the blizzard and the crazy windstorm they played in on Monday Night Football. The Tampa pass D, I think it could be exploited by Josh Allen. But the Buffalo run D is atrocious. I mean, they just allowed a ton of yards to a team that only threw the ball 3 times. And so I think Buffalo is going to throw the ball a lot. I think Tampa is going to run the ball a lot, and I think that both teams are going to have a lot of success. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game, but I'm going to take Buffalo to pull the upset here on the road and drop Tampa. And so moving along, we go to Green Bay, where the Packers host the Bears. The Packers are coming off of a bye. Justin Fields might be back this week. It's not a sure thing yet. It might come out later in the week. Developing Justin Fields has to be the focal point for the rest of this season. And so that's what the Bears need to do. The Packers, meanwhile, they're trying to make a push to the 1 seed. If the Buccaneers lose, as I predicted, and the Packers can win, they would be in sole possession of the 2 seed, trying to get up to that 1 seed. Last time these two teams played at Soldier Field, Aaron Rodgers looked into the stands at fans and said he owned the Bears. I think that holds true and that he owns the Bears again, regardless of who plays quarterback for the Bears. The Packers are going to walk out with a W. And that takes us to Sunday night football. The LA Rams traveling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Another huge game in the NFC West. It's huge for playoff seeding. If the Cardinals were to drop this game, suddenly the Packers or the Buccaneers could be tied for the 1 seed. Now, the Cardinals dominated this week 4 matchup when they played in LA. Murray threw for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Chase Edmonds added 120 yards on the ground. Over the last few weeks, the Cardinals have been playing better with a backup quarterback than the Rams have with their starters. The Rams have really struggled. They limped into their bye. They came out and they beat the Jags pretty convincingly. But the question becomes, is that real, or are the Jags just that bad? And so I think the Cardinals are going to win this game. Kyler Murray, if this was his first start back from his injury, I would probably take the Rams, but he got the start last week. He threw 15 passes. He was 11 of 15. He rushed the ball effectively. He kind of got back in the flow. I think Kyler Murray and the Cardinals take care of business at home. This is another notch in their cap for the 1 seed and for winning the division. They can almost secure the division with this win. And so that's going to about wrap it up here for episode number 31. Hopefully, when we get to next week to our preview shows, we'll be back to our standard 2-man team. But thank you guys for bearing with me here. Thanks for joining in. Anybody that commented during the show, I really appreciate it. If you enjoy what you heard on this show, be sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. Follow the Painted Lines at the Painted Lines. And so for me, for Mark from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.